You know, for Africa to progress, it would be necessary to understand the problem of Africans in all its particularities. Not just your own, you should get involved in the problems of Africans in every corner of Africa, not just in your country. Because believe me, there are people who are in a different country than you, maybe a neighboring country, but who are more your cousins than the people who share your national territory. I remind you that your national territory was certainly created after 1884 or 1885 after the partition of Africa. Today we are going to talk about the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the country of Koffi Olomide, Fally Ipupa. The Democratic Republic of the Congo, contrary to what many think, was not colonized by the French. Yes, we speak French there, but the country was colonized by Belgians. It is Congo-Brazzaville which was colonized by the French. That is to say that, before colonization, Africa already existed. Then, at the same time, Leopold II, the king of the Belgians, had just succeeded to the throne of his father in 1865, just after the separation of Belgium from Holland. Belgium was barely a new kingdom, and Leopold II succeeded his father Leopold I. You should know that at that time, Belgium had nothing, it was poor. Leopold II, to be able to create wealth, had proposed to his congeners to colonize the Congo. This idea had been rejected because of the atrocities that had happened with slavery. Disappointed, he had to find another way to achieve his goal. He had to find a way to settle in the Congo, because he knew he could earn a lot of money. So he came up with a completely different idea. He decided to create an NGO, which bore the name of Association Internationale du Congo. The objective of this NGO was to go to East Africa, and abolish the slavery that was still practiced by the Arabs. So he said he was coming to Africa to help Africans. But in reality this NGO was pursuing another goal. This is why I love history, because by observing history, you realize that there is nothing new on earth. It's a bit like what happened in Haiti recently, with a prominent couple, very well known, who would have made long-distance calls. A lot of money was raised to build houses. But unfortunately, who benefited? History teaches us to unmask even the most cunning people. Man does not change. He becomes more and more himself. To come back to our story, King Leopold II via his NGO sent a representative named Stanley Henry. The latter's purpose was to make the local chiefs sign a piece of paper, an agreement which was supposed to bring to these chiefs clothes, fabrics. The chiefs, who could neither read nor write, did not know what they were signing. In reality, the piece of paper that these chiefs signed was a means for Leopold II to possess all the territory. And after a while Stanley was able to sign over 500 local chefs. And in a very short time the Democratic Republic of the Congo, larger than Belgium, was in the hands of a single person, Leopold II. At that time, after the creation of the cars, there was a strong need for rubber to tire manufacturing. Leopold II, who already owned Belgium, had in his hands a rubber production machine, because there is a lot of rubber in this country. Leopold II could not let this opportunity pass. You should know that peace, serenity, love, joy reigned in the Congo. People lived very well in their traditions, in their cultures, and love reigned. Upon his arrival, Leopold II created his private militia. And this militia had the objective of subjugating the local population. Leopold II, in his need for wealth, had forced the local population to go work the rubber. There was a minimum quota of rubber that had to be produced every day. Each man, in each house was obliged to go to work in the fields, to bring back rubber for a certain Leopold II who had never set foot in Africa before. And for every man who didn't reach his daily quota of rubber, at first his wife was taken from him as punishment. But after everything changed, we started cutting off their hands with machetes. So, you don't reach your daily quota of rubber, your hand is brutally cut off to serve as an example to the rest of the population. For the interest of Leopold II, the King of the Belgians, all that so that he can manufacture the tires of the cars. Curiously, no one talks about this story. Everyone talks about Hitler because of his atrocities, but we don't talk about people like Leopold II. Yet Leopold II killed 10 million people in Africa, 10 million humans, lives lost to satisfy his personal desires, his basic need to earn money. The men in this militia also had guns. Now, for each rifle, a detailed number of bullets was given. For each ball, a hand had to be presented. That is to say that it happened that the members of this militia went through the forests and found themselves hunting animals to have something to eat. And at the end of each day, you had to justify the number of bullets used to your superior. So if there is a missing ball, you have to present a hand. And people felt compelled to go cut hands to justify the missing ball. So a chance shot, a missed shot while chasing an antelope, was justified by someone's hand. It is simply unbelievable, unimaginable. 10 million humans who lived at home in peace, serenity, saw their lives suddenly changed, via the severed hands, the confiscated women, the dead. There was a representative of King Leopold II who put skulls on his garden. These skulls belonged to the men killed. It was his way of embellishing the garden. It's just shocking. So we come to your house, and we make you work rubber for someone else. If you refuse to work, they kill you. You agree to work, but if you don't bring your daily quota, your wife is taken, and then your hand is brutally cut off. You have to know your story. During this time, the missionaries who arrived in the country to preach the gospel to the blacks saw all this, but said nothing. It was not until 1900, with the arrival of Washington William, a black American Baptist missionary, that everything changed. He was shocked by what he saw, shocked by the pain, the atrocities, the severed hands, the flowing blood. And there, he decides to write an open letter to the King of Belgium, pointing out everything that was happening in the Congo. So the NGO created by the king, which was supposed to help the people, was ultimately not there to help the people, but to empty the country of its wealth, kill people, massacre humans, separate families for personal gain. It was not until 1908 that Belgium took the Congo into the hands of King Leopold II. And that was the start of colonization as we know it today. A few months ago, the Belgian king apologized to the Congolese president for all these atrocities, this after many years of pressure, many years of waiting, so that Belgium can recognize the atrocities committed, and it is today that the King of the Belgians says, to move forward in the good, we must apologize for the bad committed. For me it is not enough. Remember that the Jews also lived such stories in the past. In their case, we did not just apologize. In addition to the apology, Germany paid money as damages. Each person who had been affected received a sum of money to compensate them, but as in the present case it is about the blacks, we will only apologize, and then we will continue to exploit the diamond, the uranium. I think that in this case we should also pay for the damage created. Blacks are not subhuman, and I think we should not accept that, just to assert our rights in the same way than the others. And no matter the country in which I find myself, whether it is in Congo, Kenya, Cameroon, I consider myself African, and I will fight with the last energy for the interests of our peoples. It's the only way to win. I have often told you that before fighting someone, you must first know their history, their qualities, their abilities, their way of functioning, all this so as not to be surprised. There is a Belgian myth which says that once there was a very strong, irresistible giant, no one could resist him. He had terrorized the local population. Out of his greed, he demanded a tax from every worker who lived around the Scheldt River. So every worker living around this place had to pay him a tax for his work done. And all who were unable to pay this tax saw his hand brutally cut off and thrown into the river. And this went on for several years, to the point where the news spread over the entire territory, and everyone was afraid. This giant cut off the hands of his victims and threw them into the river. One day, a brave and courageous young soldier stood up and confronted the giant. In a fierce fight, he beat him. He also cut off his hands to throw them in the river. You know, the Belgian city in verse or in green, in Dutch, is called Antwerpen, and many suggest that the word Antwerpen would come from the Dutch name Handwerpen, which means to throw hands. And today in verse, we massively produce counterpoured chocolates in representation with black hands. It is only recently that the status of the king of the Belgians, Leopold II, the African clog, was removed. It's a clog. Today the king of the Belgians, Philippe, apologized to the people via the President of the Republic of the Congo for what they did. But I think there's a better way to apologize if you really want to prove your good faith. This video is coming to an end. If you liked it, like it, and leave a comment. See you next time in a new video.